Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I respect to lecturer who teach all self-development and professionalism administrations course, Miss Dr. Widya Parimita SE MPA, and then allow me to introduce myself. My name is Nadia Navani from the Digital Office Administration Department, who will present the result of my learnings regarding the origin of personality and third structure of personality. For the first is psychodynamic theories of personality, the role of the unconscious. Psychodynamic approach, an approach to understanding human behavior that focus on the role of unconscious thought, feelings, and memories. Freud used the observations that he and Charcot had made to develop his theory regarding the source of personality and behavior. Freud did not believe that we are capable of controlling our own behavior. Instead, he believes that behavior is determined by motivations that are outside our awareness or subconscious. Pendekatan psikodinamik adalah suatu pendekatan untuk memahami perilaku manusia yang berfokus pada kepribadian, peran pikiran, perasaan, dan ingatan alam bawah sadar. For Freud, the mind was like iceberg, with the many motivations of the unconscious being much larger, but also out of sight in comparison to the consciousness of which we are aware. Freud proposed that the mind is divided into three components: id, ego, and superego, and that the interactions and conflict among the components create personality. First is the id. The id is the component of personality and forms the basis of our most primitive impulses. The id is entirely unconscious, and it drives our most important motivations, including the sexual drive or libido, and the aggressive or destructive drive on thanatos. For the second is the ego. The ego is the largely conscious control or decision maker of personality. The ego serves as the intermediary between the desires of the id and the constraints of society contained in the superego. The superego represents our sense of morality and oaths. The superego tells us all the things that we shouldn't do or the duties and obligations of society. The superego strives for perfections, and when we fail to live up to its demands, we feel guilty. The next material is focusing on the self, humanism, and self-actualizations. Theories of humanistic psychology and approach to psychology that embrace the notions of self-esteem, self-actualization, and free will. Berbeda dengan teori sebelumnya, yaitu pendekatan psikodinamik, psikolog humanistik adalah sebuah pendekatan yang mencakup gagasan tentang harga diri, aktualisasi, dan keinginan bebas. People who believe in this theory adhere to the idea of free will. By arguing that humans are free to choose, make their own decisions, or focus on the underlying motivations that they believe drive personality, focusing on the nature of the self-concept, the seed of beliefs about who we are, and self-esteem, our positive feelings about the self. And the second material is Freud's structure of personality. According to Freud, there are three basic structures of personality. These elements work together to create complex behaviors and have powerful influence on individuals. The first is the id, biological. The id is the only component of personality present birth and is entirely unconscious, the primitive and instinctive part of the mind that consists of all inherited of biological components of personality, including sexual and aggressive drives, impulsive, irrational demands, immediate satisfactions, pleasure principle, entirely unconscious, selfish, chaotic, primitive, and instinctive. Although people eventually learn to control it by the ego, the id remains infantile in these functions throughout a person's life and does not change with time and experience, as this not to touch with the external world. Ketika kebutuhan mereka akan tidak segera terpuaskan, maka timbullah keadaan kecemasan atau ketegangan. The second is ego, psychological. Freud said the ego is the part of the age which has been modified by the direct influence of the external world. It develops to mediate between the unrealistic it and the external real world. It is the part the conscious, rational decision-making component of personality. The ego considers social realities and norms, etiquette, and rules in deciding how to behave. It works out a realistic ways of satisfying its demand is manner acceptable in the real world. Freud menganalogikan it sebagai seekor kuda, sedangkan ego adalah penunggangnya. Ego ibarat manusia di atas kuda yang harus memegang dan memeriksa kekuatan unggul kuda tersebut. Superego or social. The last component of personality to develop is the superego, which emerges around age 5. It is the part the conscious, self-evaluate, and moralistic component of personality. This is formed through the internationalizations of parental and societal rules. The superego provides guidance for making judgments and focuses on how we ought to behave. The superego consists of two systems, the consciousness and the ideal self. The consciousness can punish the ego through causing feelings of guilt. Example for the consciousness is if the ego gives it so it demands. The superego may make the person feel bad through guilt. And then the ideal self or ego ideal is an imaginary picture of how you ought to be and represents career aspirations, how to treat other people, and how to behave as a member of society. Pada kesempatan kali ini saya akan menjelaskan macam-macam defense mechanism. For the first is repressions. Repressions acts to keep information out of conscious awareness. However, these memories don't just disappear, they continue to influence our behavior. For the example is a person who witnesses his parents having sex is later unable to remember anything about the event. Daniel was probably one of the best known defense mechanisms and is an outright refusal to admit or recognize that something has occurred or is currently occurring. And projection is a defense mechanism that involves taking out our own unacceptable qualities or feelings and ascribing them to other people. The example of projection is a man with powerful unconscious sexual desires for a woman claims that women use him as a sex object. Theorization is a defense mechanism that involves explaining an unacceptable behavior or feelings in a rational or logical manner, avoiding the two reasons for the behavior. For the example of rationalization is a drama student convinces herself that getting the part in the play wasn't that important after all. Displacement is transferring inappropriate ideas or behaviors into more acceptable or less threatening target. The example is displacement is a student who is angry at her professor for a low grade, lashes out at her roommate who is a severe target of her anger. And reaction formations is reducing anxiety by adopting beliefs contrary to your own belief. For the example of reactions formation is Jane is sexually attracted to friend Jake, but she claims that she intensely dislikes him. And the regressions is returning to coping strategies for less mature strategies of development. For the example is a university student who is worried about an important test begins to suck on his finger. Sublimation is reducing unacceptable desires through socially acceptable channels. For the example is sublimation is a person participates in sports to sublimate aggressive drives. A person creates music art to sublimate sexual drive. That's all for me. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.